Agenda is our agenda approval. I'll give you a few moments to look over the agenda, see if there's anything you want to change about it. There a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Already for a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving today's agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The agenda is approved. Next, we'll be moving into the approval of meeting minutes from last meeting. I'll give you a few moments to look that over and see if there's any changes that need to be made. Alrighty, is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Alrighty, the ayes have it. The meeting minutes are approved. Next, we'll be moving into reports, starting with the chair. I have none. Advisors,
I have none.
ASCWU. We check, do we record? Oh. That was Already going into communications received. Would you like me to read it?
You don't have to read it. This was just a response from last week. Kirk Kirkstein provided this in related to, I believe it was your question, Eli, about why they had some budgeting left over from a previous budget year. So he just wanted to explain why. So it had been received and documented.
I'll be making my first comment, or sorry, my first call for public comment. Is there any public comment? Forward with our new business, we have our first presentation, starting with the Equity and Services Council. You have the floor.
Hi, everybody. I've got my team coming up with me, so we're just gonna do some quick introductions. And then we're also handing around a little fact sheet that's gonna kind of summarize a lot of what our presentation has, if you'd like to reference it. My name is Justin Santoli. I use he, him pronouns. I serve as the advisor to the Equity and Services Council.
Hi guys, I'm Happy. I am the Director of Equity and Multicultural Affairs, and then I'll have Evelyn introduce herself. I'm Evelyn. I am the ESC Executive Assistant. And Selena, and I'm the ESC Programmer.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Thank you, Abby.
Yeah.
And actually, that's you, so go.
So, for the ESC, there's 10 different orgs, all that different, have diverse groups, communities that kind of go to them as a source of building community education, empowerment and celebration. So these are just a few, or actually these are all of them. I like. So we have like Black Student Union, Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Yucatán, Latine, Student Association, African Student Association, Japanese, Filipino, Equality, First Gen, Asia University American Program, and Pacific Islander Student Association. So as we mentioned ourselves, we kind of are the executive team to lead all these, to make sure that they meet all their goals, that they are getting all the things that they need to kind of continue forward.
So looking at a glance at our budget this year, we operate on a budget of about 54,703, actually more because as you recall, we had a supplemental funding request that came in to help us meet our minimums. But there's kind of three broad categories that our budget is allocated, is kind of spread out toward. One is staff salaries. Evelyn and Selima's position are funded under our department. Javi's and my salaries are funded from other areas on the campus. Our ESC programs, we'll talk about that in a couple minutes, but Selima, through her role as programmer, is required to put on at least one event per quarter, so we allocate funds to that. It also goes toward office expenses and things like that. And then our org allocations. So what distinguishes these 10 student organizations that you just heard about from the, I think there's about 100 or so registered student organizations is that not only do they represent historically marginalized communities, but they also go through a quite intensive year-long process of showing up to meetings, engaging in community service, and then they are then voted in by the current voting members of the council. So being a branch of the student government, it allows them to advocate for the needs of their communities, to kind of have a seat at the table, in addition to putting on some really great cultural programming and things like that that we'll talk about also as well.
So. 9,997 of that is allocated to class salaries. So my position and Selena's position, I am responsible for day-to-day tasks such as meeting minutes at every meeting, sending out a weekly email and other tasks as needed. Selena is responsible for managing our social media. She plans and
Events.
yes, plans events, at least one a quarter that promotes all of the organizations and then I will be talking about my budget that I specifically use. So as Justin and Evelyn have said, I plan about 3 events per quarter. So for fall quarter, we do the fall block party, which brings a fun little get together for everyone that we host on campus. All of our organizations will table and can get a little bit of promotion. Since it is fall quarter, we get a lot of new students. And then winter quarter, we do the night market, which is our biggest event. That's where ESC orgs can sell goods or foods. And then spring, we have the ESC Gala as a little end of the year celebration to celebrate our accomplishments and the org's accomplishments as a whole. And then we have our office supplies, so my name tag, and then our Canva Pro account, which I specifically use. I need to make posters, I need to make flyers, I need to make social media posts, not only just for us, but also for the orgs. I help with that as well.
And we also share that account information with the rest of the org so that they can have full access to digital marketing abilities. Okay. So now getting into the org allocation. So as it's stated in the ESC Constitution, every org, and as part of the perks of going through this intensive process to become an organization, is the main perk that they get is that they are dedicated $30,500 a year to go toward programming, as compared to the RSOs, who that funding is not always secured, or things like that. So with that, with those allocations, these orgs put on, again, a wide variety of cultural programs. Some of those are listed in your fact sheet, but they do a wide range of things, and we'll have data in another slide coming up. Things like Harumatsuri, the ESC block party, like Selima mentioned, Norte para Siempre, that's hosted by Mecha, and BSU is having Showtime, which is actually coming up. Polyfest also in the spring is one of our larger events. So these groups put on a lot of year. They spend a year planning these events and putting on these really great programs that's open to anybody to attend, to learn about a variety of cultural aspects. So that's where a bulk of their funding is used toward in that $3,500 allocation. And also I wanted to also mention the labor that goes into these, which that does not even include the ESC cultural graduations, which are, while not funded by the ESC budget, they spend we have a year-long timeline that they spend. So they start planning that in fall to put on events in May for that. So it's a lot of labor and time that these student volunteers are putting in to provide really excellent programming for their groups.
Just kind of looking at how those programs get engagement from students here on campus. So overall, the ESC, including us as a board with the events we have, as well as like all the 10 orgs, we have engaged with about 3,550 in the fall to fall 23-24 timeline. About 110 general meetings, so that includes the weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings that each org does, as well as our Friday meetings that we host for them to kind of get information on. 19 events total, typically, just also same thing going through our events, as well as the ones that Justin just mentioned, plus more. And then 400 hours of community service. So each quarter, each org is required to do 10 hours of civic hours. And so through that, it kind of just builds up, and that's where that comes from. The 19 collaborative events, most of their events that they end up doing do have some support from other places here on campus. So that's why they're even on there. And then identities represented in each one. So as listed, there's like first gen, Black, Filipino, Japanese, Latina, the LGBTQIA, international and AAPI that are represented. But we are hoping to kind of expand to more identities on campus.
Okay, and last point we wanted to make is about what we are requesting for the next 4 years. ESC continues to grow and get very popular every year, and more eyes, as you saw with the data, that our programs have, especially coming out of COVID, have really increased in attendance and engagement. So we are requesting for the first year to get our base funding to that 64,357, because that is the bare minimum that is needed to be able to continue to provide that 3,500 allocation for these 10 orgs. And then also be able to have our 2 part-time executive team positions, because they both do very distinct and important work that otherwise would have to be kind of shared between the director position and myself. And then we are hoping with every 2 years, we would love to be able to have the ability to bring in and allow one new ESC org, one new group to join ESC's ranks every couple of years. We have actually started conversations with a couple of student kind of demographics that have reached out for interest. Actually, in the last couple of days, I was made aware that there's a Tessie Student Association that is really interested in getting integrated in the university and doing some events around that. Native American Student Union, that's a population that we've been really trying to connect with and have consistent and regular engagement and offer support for. So we also used to have it's not on here, but a ability, they were called ABLE. So they focused on disability rights and organizing. So groups like that have kind of come and gone through ESC, but we want to have the ability, if they do pop up again, to be able to bring them back, because those provide key sort of key perspectives and key demographics for us to have to really represent the university very well in the work that they do, and in just the cultural appreciation and joy that ESC focuses on celebrating. So that's it. I think that's all we had. So thank you all. Leave it there for Q&A.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was such a good presentation. Yeah, ESC is always just like a really fun place on campus, so I really appreciate for the environment you guys make.
Thank you.
Is there any questions? I have a couple.
Okay.
So you mentioned wanting to expand every 2 years. Does your budget is that already inside your budget, the extra allotments for
It's not. We can usually get creative with it. When an ESC org when a registered student organization is undergoing the process to become an ESC org, they are entitled to $1,000 of programming until they join the ranks of ESC. But essentially what that would mean, and what we would have to kind of get creative with, is exploring other funding avenues. We definitely want to try our absolute hardest to never have to turn away a group if they're interested. So usually what that sometimes will mean is exploring either reducing the hours for the programmer position, or requesting supplemental funds for that year. There's a lot of kind of creative ways where maybe we're spending less on the executive programming, but we would, again, I would like to have what we're requesting is, especially for that first year, to have the baseline for the orgs we know exist, so that we don't have to reduce their funding at all, because they really do use it all up, especially for the signature events they do, which again, I just checked a couple of days ago, and they have about 9 or 10 big scale events that you saw on the other data slide that they're doing in spring alone. So that's going to bring in hundreds and hundreds of students attending and engaging with that. So we would like to not have to reduce that, but then also be able to, again, since that's going to get more eyes, and as we grow into the MCC and have more capabilities to do more types of programming, I'm sure that's also going to bring more eyes onto what we do.
any other questions?
Have you done the budget reductions since the last baseline cycle?
We did not need to, because we received that funding, we received the supplemental funding. So sorry, let me rephrase that. So we did have the reduction, which was I think it was previously it was a $10,000 reduction. So that's where a couple months ago we reached out for a supplemental funding request, and that allowed us again to hire Salima's position, which has been extremely important for getting eyes on our programs and keeping the orgs unified, and then also being able to not have security in the programming and things of that nature. So.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on with our agenda, we'll be hearing from the GEC/MCC. You have the floor. Oh, okay, it's like.
Great.
Use your imagination. Just imagine.
What if I did no funding?
There you go.
Imagine this. Okay. Well, we'll start. Well, my name is Mal Stuman. I'm the director of the Diversity and Equity Center, and I'll let you take this go.
Hi again, my name's Justin. I also serve as a program manager in the DEC.
And hello, my name is Victoria Linder. I'm also a program manager at the DEC.
Also here with us today is Rose Montano, who's our grad assistant. Okay.
Okay, so hi again. I just wanted to introduce what we do in the DEC and the types of services that we provide. So overall, what we really just try to do is create a space where students can have opportunities to kind of explore their own identities and explore other cultures. We do that through a lot of different ways. We have Culture Corner, recurring series where people can get snacks and kind of talk about interesting topics. Workshops, we provide a lot of really great workshops and discussion trainings. Also providing a space for community, so kind of like a space for people to find their space. So we have a couple of affinity groups that meet on a recurring basis. We Thrive is our Women of Color Empowerment group. QFAM is our LGBTQ plus affinity group, and we have sort of soft launched a new one for men of color affinities. So that's MoCA. So they started meeting almost weekly actually. And then our living room space, we're really proud of the fact that you don't really need an appointment to be in our space. So if our doors open, it's always welcome. And we encourage students to hang out on our couches, meet with our student staff, and it's a great way to connect with. And a lot of the ESC orgs meet in our space in the evenings as well. So we're also unique in that regard that we open later than other offices. And then finally, students, especially our ESC orgs, like to get very politically engaged. And so we support that in the best ways that we can, and of course within university policy. So usually that manifests in providing spaces for them to gather, materials for them to create posters and signage, and kind of knowing their rights and things of that nature. So we try to provide something for really shy people and the really big signature events that Vic will talk about in a second. This is just a brief overview of what our makeup is and how our office operates. So we have 4 full-time professional staff, Mal, Vic, and myself. We also have Michelle Cook, who is our office manager and helps us with our budgeting and finance. We also, a big portion of our budget goes towards our student programmers, and we like to hire student staff that range in almost all of our identities and school standing as well. And they are really the ones who are bringing us the ideas about what they want to do, and we support them in developing as leaders and as event planners, and really giving us the focus on what students are wanting now on campus, because we've been out of college for a while, so it's important. So they really help us stay connected with what students are needing support on. We also hire a graduate assistant to help with that as well and kind of gain those supervision and leadership skills. And then finally, a marketing team of 3 student employees as well to help us with our graphic design, our online presence, really staying in with the pulse of the culture, and helping us make sure that our events are being promoted really engagingly and that we're taking really good photos and archives of what we do. Oh.
Yeah, so like Justin was talking about earlier, the DEC really tries to focus its programming on a myriad of different ways, right? We want to make sure we're hitting everyone that might just not only be going through our center, but also just here at here at CWU, because we know how hard it is to, be away from home for the first time. We do this through our year-long programs. We have a podcast where real authentic people, the Raps, talk about real topics that are happening live. I think a episode's airing next week. We have Culture Corner, where people talk about social topics, find your people. We also do a lot of the identity-based programming, like Justin mentioned earlier, QFAM, Thrive, shared affinity, and trying to build that community, or even just a space for that community to foster on campus. Here are a list of examples of programs that we actually have coming up. This one is next week. A lot of these are past events or events that we did this last quarter. We also do a lot of Heritage Month and event programming, such as Heritage Hispanic Month, where we brought in Cheech Marin. We also do Black History Month programming. We just did Taste of Soul last night. It was a really great hit. I think we had almost 300 people by the time we were packing out. And we also bring guest speakers to talk about these heritage months, like Raymond Santana, Shaquem Griffin recently. And we do a lot of programming for other months, such as Women's History Month, API Month, and Parade of Nations, which stay tuned for the spring, which is really fun. Okay, well, here we go. Okay, here are some photos from actually some of the past events we did. We did Q Prom for the second year. It is CWU's first ever focused on two LGBT plus QIA plus. Sorry, acronyms are very hard today. Event for people who might not have experienced prom, how traditionally prom should be experienced. We did a Black History, Black Joy and Resistance exhibit. We have been doing a lot of Indigenous centered programming because we have some Indigenous students in the office, and they've been doing a lot of programming around that identity. Like I mentioned, Cheech Marin, and just a lot of different ways to celebrate our identity here at Central. Okay, big number time. So I really like data, and ever since I've been at the DEC, we have been tracking how many people go to our events. So this data comes from a combination of presence and our own comprehensive calendar, where we just kind of keep track of, how many people are going to these events. Are these events really hitting the right audiences? As you can see here, from 2020 to 2021 year, all the way up until the most recent complete quarter of fall, 2024, we have been increasing in not only people who have been attending our events, but also our daily check-ins, which are ESC works who come into our space to use our events or our space. People who just want to study and hang out, or who are just looking for workshops, any sort of thing. As you can see, our total attendees have been increasing. And in fall 2024 alone, we've had 1,760 people interact with us in some way, shape, or form. And I thought it was really cool that about 15,000 people, roughly based off my calculations and the programs, have interacted with the DEC in some way, shape, or form at an event, coming into our space, or even just interacting with us at tabling. So as you can see, it just has been increasing, especially since COVID, which I think is what we've been seeing in a lot of different programmings.
So the next phase is to talk about kind of where we're going from here. I'm sure you've all heard of the Multicultural Center project, which if you haven't been in Black lately, has already started to some degree. So it's pretty exciting. There's a lot of plastic and tape on the floor. So they're moving to get that started. But the biggest point that we notice here is that we're going to be increasing our size right here from what we have right now to almost double. So in anticipation of that, you'll see some things that we reference on that. These are some mock-ups. I think some of y'all have seen these already. What the space will look like. This is going to be the front door area here. This, when you walk in, this will be the kind of the welcome desk. And this will be one of the rooms that will be created that does not currently exist. So kind of a really decent size space for clubs, anyone to use. It's everything that we have in our spaces for everybody to use. So anyone can book them. This will be kind of our workspace and a living room here. And this is the front door area. You can see where that's at. This is going to be another kind of just a hangout spot, possibly, kind of, this is a kitchen here. And this, just to make a note, And the correlation between Justin, who was funded out of our office, and does almost 75% of his work is with ESC. So we fund that position, but ESC will have a home here as far as that space will be dedicated for ESC kind of maker space, org activity space as such. And next one, please. And then this is our kitchen. I wanted to highlight that. This is something unique that students really request, was a space to be able to cook their own foods. It will not be used as a commercial kitchen, but a group or anyone can walk in and cook something if they want to cook and share that with their friends on a small scale. But that will be something that we will be managing as well. And then this is just a picture of what we call the library, kind of another space that will be available for students to just kind of come and be. There will be no specific, requirement from that space. So we're going to go from having right now one space to meet in to 4, maybe 6 to 6 various sizes spaces for students to meet. So we're excited about that. So down to the nitty gritty. You'll see, here's our budget request here. Just some budget notes. Obviously, you see a difference from what we requested over the last quadrennium, which was 542,000 and change. This time we're asking for 483, which is a 21% decrease from our last funding request. So while things are kind of challenging for everybody, we still had to find a way to make space for the possibilities that we're going to be in the multicultural center. Some other things, request flex that transition, and also just understanding that we'll have kind of increased budget needs for the space. We intend to have it open considerably, as you can see, possibly twice as long. We would have staffing at the front desk, similar to the CERC model, where students can come there and be able to use that space for studying. We have a separate workspace, would probably be closed on different hours, but the overall space would be used as a free use space for students. All students can come in there and spend time in there. And then, of course, our orgs would have the opportunity to use the specific spaces for meetings and things like that. So those are the biggest changes. Obviously, we don't understand yet fully what it means to manage that space. So we also kind of had to build some buffer into like, okay, what does it mean to have staff that can set up a space and tear it down and kind of maintain the space as well. So.
And we're actually currently in the process of working and having discussion groups with the ESC orgs about what like their preference for hours would be, that will then kind of merge with obviously whatever happens here, so that we can try to find the best fit so that the center is what is focused on what the students wanted and needed from it.
With that, we will conclude.
How many staff are you looking to hire for these new positions?
So it will be student staff, really. So I would imagine it could be 2 to 4 for what it would take to staff a front desk area, kind of like the CERC. So we have some coverage there. And really, as we think about being open later, we need people to be there to do closing. So given the fact that students can only work, and we might be able to get some of that done with the grad assistant as well. But given the idea that students need to be there to unlock doors, and so I would imagine 2 to 4. We can get 4 people to cover that. Yeah.
And it's the nature of the roles too, right? So generally right now we only have like most of our staff are student programmers, and then we have and then social media folks, but this would require us to kind of have more unique job descriptions like building manager style things, and we'd have to kind of be more dedicated, which would affect the programming side of the house. So having more helps.
Sure. Yes.
How is the remodel for the MCC funded?
It is funded separately through the state, students lobbied for this money, was granted to us through the state legislature, and was given to the tune of $6 million. So that is not coming out of any university dollars. We're grateful to get that in the right timing. And so that's where that's coming from.
And that's only for the construction, right? So that now we're faced with the challenge of growing twice the size, and thus we need to figure out how to staff that size. So, but that 6 million only went toward the construction. So when the building's built, whoever we have as staff is gonna be how we work.
It's gonna include furnishings and stuff?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so furnishings, they call it FF&E, furnishing fixtures and equipment. There's a separate line of that budget that they carve out of the $6 million. And there's the capital planning, it does all of that kind of work, we sit in and we answer questions about what we need to finish for, but they decide all that and have created the budget for all that. So, and that's all available. If you want to come by, we have links where you can see where everything is a little bit more. We're here, there's lots to see and lots to explore with that.
I have another one. I don't know if you presented it or not. Do you have data on how many people use the facility each day?
So that is a part of our daily check-in that we track through Presence. Now granted, in case, I mean, y'all have heard already, Presence is no longer being used. So we are kind of currently in the process of trying to figure out, okay, what do we do now? We do try to keep count of how many people come into our space each day, as well as know what type of maybe group meeting or ESC org might be meeting in that space. And then we try to keep note of that separately. But since we are down Presence, we are trying to find a newer way, especially with the MCC when we have a larger space, how many people are coming and going. I think it has a couple of doors like you mentioned. So that's also going to be something we're thinking about. But at least for the last 4 years, we do have pretty consistent day-to-day data. But this quarter has been a little wonky.
You want to show them?
Yes. I'm very proud of my chart.
So yeah, this is, you have the
Yeah, so this is like the last 3 quarters or the 3 quarters of the academic year. And then when you go on Presence, if you look at the analytical side, it tracks each day. So like one day, say we had 62 people coming in. Ideally, we could compare that with, say, the ESC Presence data to say, oh, hey, we noticed you met on this day. How many people did you go to? And then we could break it down that way. But like I said, Presence is gone and the newer app is a little more to navigate in terms of daily check-in. So I think what we're also looking into is possibly clickers, or similar to what the library does, maybe a connection card, just scan it, pop it in. So we are looking into different processes also.
How does, I assume the unique attendees comes from Presence too? I was kind of curious how it calculates that, if you know.
To the best of my understanding, now I've been told this from many different people for my many years here working with Presence. I think it's people who have not attended a DEC event before, so possibly like brand new for the very first time. A lot of the numbers are recurring, so it is like, say if someone goes to one event one day and then they check in another day, they would be counted technically for both. So I believe unique attendees is like never before checked into the space, never before encountered the DEC in some way on Presence.
Sure.
Granted, that does also not include maybe international students, because sometimes their student IDs don't scan properly for Presence. But for the most part, that is to the best that I understand it.
It also doesn't track faculty and staff, which often don't check in our space. They use it quite a bit for seminars, and a lot of the students on the recruiting side with the admissions, they bring a lot of the tours and that space as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we can't really track, but we're not able to track accurately because they don't have connection cards, but they do use the space.
But as you see, it has also been increasing last couple years as well.
I have a question. You mentioned that you want to follow the CIRC model for the MCC. Will you also be charging students for using certain spaces?
Not part of it.
If they will be like following the CIRC, whereas they're charging students to use facilities.
Now, we may need to explore models for other folks, other users. We don't know what the costs are going to be, honestly, and that's one of the things that we have to think about. But absolutely, this is not going to be an expense for students like our spaces right now. So students can use our space right now, and we don't charge them for tech. We don't charge them for the space or their time or anything like that. So you can keep that same model.
Oh, so the MCC was funded by the state for that. Are you guys going to be trying to secure maybe other funding through the state or through the university to subsidize this at some point?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, today I just submitted a grant for 75,000. Whether we get it or not, to do men's programming, that's also what that grant's for. So we hope to do that. We do have a little bit of foundation, and there will be some naming opportunities that come from the rooms and the spaces. So we've kind of got that conversation started with foundation that we want to be in the room. And we intend to use that money to kind of help co-fund, you know, the work that we do there. But, you know, we're gonna always be looking for grants. We're always gonna be looking for fundraising opportunities, to do that for sure.
And our partnership with student government, which, you know, since they were one of the key players in bringing this project to people and to the state really. So as the MCC opens and they start to see what the needs are and what we can and cannot meet, we're hoping to have them as key partners and helping to bring that awareness and need based funding to advocate for that exact thing, right?
Just really curious about your budget
Sure.
spending. I see that the salary wage for staff.
Yeah.
In 2022, it was quite high, and then in 2023 it dropped quite a bit. I was wondering why.
We have less professional staff than we did, at the time of that, due to the last budget challenges. We had an assistant director position, and that position transitioned to be in charge of the career center. We were not really allowed to, just to, the way the budget was set up, that money was swept, and we were not allowed to rehire that position. So we kind of backfilled in a different way, but we weren't able to hire back at that level. One other thing that's reflected is that our office assistant, prior to my coming, was reduced to half-time, 0.5 FTE. We would like to consider moving that back to full-time because of the needs that the center would require. But those are two things that would be reflected in that.
Then my last question is 2022 travel went up and then it went down. I was wondering what because it seems like I'm wondering like where travel fits into this program.
So all of us have the opportunity, we're members of professional organizations that help us to hone our craft and learn more about the upcoming trends. So like NASPA, there's one called NCORE, National Conference on Race and Ethnicity. And so we try to build that into our opportunity so that we can keep learning. We don't always get to do it, but when we can, we'd like to try to do it. So.
Thank you so much. Alrighty, thank you for that presentation. We'll be moving forward with our agenda with the ECLC.
Keep the volume. You're good.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Hill, and I'm the director at the Early Childhood Learning Center. And I have a PowerPoint to give you a little idea of where we're located on campus, what we do, tell you about our story, how long we've been there. And then Trent is on there, so to help with any questions, and then my direct report goes up here then. So we're out in Brooklyn Village. We've been there for quite some time, and we have ages 2 through 8, and we opened in 1983. So we've been around for a long time. And then infants and toddlers, we opened that up in September 2005, and that was in Michelson, room 109. And so infants and toddlers is basically 4 weeks to 12 months, and then your toddlers is 12 to 36 months. So that's what that looked like then. Currently, we have infants and toddlers up in Brooklyn Village, and if you're not familiar with that, it's past the challenge course off of 18th Street, down past the challenge course, and the housing down there.
And we're tucked in, we're after G Court on the right. We offer early learning care for 79 children in 2 separate facilities. We have 56 up at ECLC in Brooklyn and 23 at the Rainbow Room. And we have basically an annex, they call it, next door to us, and that is where we have infants and toddlers. So it's just Suite 101 and 102, and the ages are 2 through 8, and then 4 weeks for 36 months. We take as young as 4 weeks. And then Green Room is our school age, and that is now down in Michelson, room 109, and we have ages 5 through 12 down there. And we can have 23 children down there. So we're designed to provide quality childcare service. And we use creative curriculum to serve the needs of young children from 1 month to 12 years in age. The primary goal is to sustain curiosity and eagerness to learn in all young children. We follow creative curriculum. We follow the food program, the OSPI food program. We teach to the child's area of development and education, cognitive, emotional, social, creative, and physical. We offer family events, usually around 4 to 6, and we always have a fall harvest fest. We will bring all the families in for our Thanksgiving meal in November. Winterfest is in January, and then Spring Fling and the barbecue, and we have that on the study day, so everybody is able to attend. Occasionally we have parent night out, where we provide a night out for parents. Some use it for studying, some use it for all sorts of things, and they bring their child back out. Usually it's around between 6 to 9 p.m. Dr. Seuss, we have that one coming up March 17th. And Dino Stomp, we kind of toggle back and forth between those two. Parents in the classroom, we invite everybody into the classroom. Everybody's invited to come showcase what they would like to, whether it's a story, music, instrument. And then we have end of summer luau for barbecue in August. And we follow the calendar of Central. So that's what we call the end of the summer luau. It's the last day of summer session, the 8-week session. And then the pre-K classrooms go on field trips throughout the year. And about 31 years that we've received S&A funding. And this is what it looks like if you've been out in that neck of the woods. So that's Brooklyn with the ages 2 through 8. And then just right next door is infants and toddlers. And the playground is behind. We back up to the creek there. And this is what Michelson is down there, room 109. And we just did a visual just so you could see, maybe when you walk by, you can hear kids playing. It's the big tall brick wall. That's a little play area in there off the mall. Our org chart, I report to Joseph, and then we do not have, that is a vacant. Site supervisor and assistant director is vacant currently right now. We have lead teacher for infants, lead teacher for toddlers, and then in our classrooms, we have it broken up to ages 2 and 3, and so we have a lead teacher in each of the classrooms, and then we also have a cook, and then it's usually about 30 to 40 student staff a quarter. A variety of practicums from Amy Claridge's program. Dr. Dia Gary comes out as well, and AUAP also come visit. So practicum volunteers are about 5 to 10 a quarter. And then we have part-time temps. I have on there 4, we have 3 now. So we serve about 75 to 100 students during the academic year, or not the year, not the academic, fall, winter, spring, and summer, and that's main campus. Some people take online classes, some people go to branches. We're also able to take student parents and care for their child. Demographics, this is from our food program because they asked for that. So I have the percentage for ECLC and then the Rainbow Room. And Hispanic and Latino, 10%, not Hispanic or Latino, 90%. And then it breaks it out. This is just how the food program does it for us. The races, white is 90, Black or African American 2, Asian 1, American Indian 1, Native Hawaiian 1, and multiracial 5. And then I did the Rainbow Center because they asked us to break it up that way when I enter into their program. Non-students served winter quarter 39. Every quarter is different. After June, when student parents graduate, we go down, and then we start to pick up fall and winter with more student parents. So we have 4 class groups. We have 15 children in the classrooms, except one of them we can have 17, and that's just based on the square footage. So we're all colors up there for our classroom. So red room is ages 2 and 3, yellow is 3 and 4, and blue room is 4 and 5. And the state makes a decision for the ratio. So when you see red room where the ratio is 1 to 7, 1 teacher for 7 children. And the 3 and 4-year-old room can have 1 to 10, and the 4 and 5s can have 1 to 10 also. And then when you get to rainbow for the babies, infants, you can have 4 babies by yourself, and then toddlers, you can have 7 toddlers by yourself. Green River's after school program that opened April 2018. And the ratio is 1 to 15, but our capacity down there for licensing is 23. And this is just to give you a visual of what it looks like inside of Michelson room 109 right now that we've moved the school agers down there. We did this, we predicted because we're staffing for spring right now. And so we have a pretty good idea. It depends what classes are offered and what students enroll in. But for summer, we had 18 practicums. To fall 2024, we had 38 student staff and 6 practicum. And then winter, right now we have 34 student staff and 5 practicum. And then right now, as we're sitting, student staff is 30 for next quarter, and practicum will be 7. So we're starting to place everybody and getting schedules back from student staff of what they're taking, and we can place them in the classroom. So for student learning objectives through the student employment at ECLC, the students are able to gain valuable experience hands-on in the classroom with children ages 1 month to 12 years, enables them to build their resume for future employment once graduating from CWU. 1666 with the new minimum wage, lead teachers go through training and an additional 30 hours of training, and they are $16.99 for their wage. And then ECLC designed to provide quality childcare services through the educational curriculum to serve the needs of young children ranging 1 month to 8 years. And the primary goal is to sustain curiosity, eagerness to learn in all young children, follow creative curriculum in the classrooms, except school agers, and then teaching to the area of the child's development, education, cognitive, emotional, social, and creative and physical. That's a duplicate one. I thought I got all the duplicates out. Sorry about that. And then we also do a parent survey once a year to see how the parent input is for program service direction and growth. Who we collaborate with on campus, Dr. Claridge for Family and Child Life, Dr. Dia Gary comes out with her group of students, and then we also have AUAP, the Asia University America program. And then important for program goals, supporting university goals, important to recruitment and retention of students with families. ECLC provides students with employment, educational benefits, and work experience that increase their career marketability immediately upon graduation. And then teaching and learning lab for students in a variety of fields. So not everybody that's with us is actually going into early childhood or elementary. We have a variety, and everywhere from, I would say, human resources, all the way to what's our interior design. So it's a broad range. And for rates, there's the student rates on the left, and then faculty staff is on the right, and it is a daily rate. And that's how we do the contracts and charge the families. And everybody always asks about our wait list. It varies. People don't like to take themselves off the wait list because then you go down to the bottom. So a lot of times when we go through and offer care for somebody, we go through the first, 5 or 7 people. They say no, they have other arrangements and they want to stay on the list. So sometimes our list looks really long. And then when you get to the school age, it does taper off, but then everybody wants summer care because that is limited in town, is the summer care. So infants, the student parents right now on the wait list is 2, faculty staff is 16, and then alumni is 3. And then the toddlers, oh, there goes that one. Faculty staff is 64 and alumni is 3. The student parents is right around 18 or 19.
Yeah, about one.
Okay. And then school agers, yeah, it's always really high, especially with faculty staff for the wait list. Student parents right now is 12, faculty staff is 17, and alumni is 2. Did we miss a slide before that, or was it a different? And these ones are just pictures that will rotate while you ask me questions. So I have those rotating like 3 or 5 seconds. On there, so you can see a little bit about where we're at and what it looks like inside of the classrooms and everything like that.
Thank you for the presentation. Do we have any questions? Yes.
We speak up, Marisol, and that's.
The self-supported fund. Yeah. They talk about that self-supported.
Yeah, self-support fund is just another term for, but because we are, the ECLC is an auxiliary. They have to raise their own revenue to fund. We don't get any money from the state. The only revenue we get is what Michelle and her team charges for the services, and also the support we get from S&A to offset the costs for our students. And so when you see self-support, that's the revenue that's coming in for the daily charges that Michelle talked about.
Reimbursement for the food program.
Okay, good.
We get is another one.
And then I think there's the grant dollars listed in there as well.
Yeah, the student parents can apply for a grant, so it's the WASAC grant, Washington Student Achievement Council. And so that's given out, and it's anywhere ranges about $430 to $600 a quarter for the parent, for childcare expenses, which is extremely helpful for them, especially when you have 2, 3, or more children.
It looked like, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right, that in the winter quarter, there were 39 children that were children of students. But your capacity is 62, and so that's, or excuse me, there were 39 students that were staff and faculty students, and your capacity is 62. So 63% of the children at the ECLC are of staff and faculty this quarter. Is that?
And we can have even more over that capacity because they come at different times. So I gave full day rate. We also still do morning session and afternoon session. It gets really tricky to explain that. So that's why I just did a full rate up there for everybody, but we still offer AM and PM sessions.
Want to know how you prioritize student parents?
Yeah, students are priority. And so all students are given priority to their spot. And when we have fulfilled that and there's no else, then we go to faculty staff. So that's
Staff and faculty have to leave like at the end of the quarter to make room for a student?
no. The same thing with the student parent. Pretty much faculty staff are the same schedules. They're Monday through Friday. Full day students are the ones we get the schedules from every quarter because their classes change. So one quarter they may attend 7:30 to 5:30 open to close. The next one, winter, profs don't offer a whole lot of classes and they have 2 classes. They only need a morning afternoon session. Not a whole lot of morning classes are available in the winter, and they just come afternoon session. So we will go in and go to the wait list, and we do a quarter to quarter, we call it. So we will ask if somebody wants to attend, but knowing that we can only offer childcare for that quarter only. 9 out of 10, well, 8 out of 10, I would say always say yes, even though they know that they're not going to have care the next quarter because they wanted to get into the ECLC. So that's what we call quarter to quarter. So we are always high on faculty staff. Especially after June, when most of the student parents graduate, which we had a huge chunk.
Is it possible then to get that enrollment information for the last few quarters since it changes? So maybe like from last year and this year?
Yeah, I just did the last 2, but yeah, it varies, but I can go back. And then you have to realize, so right now, all of our infants are student parents. And then when you turn 12 months, you have to go to the toddler room. And so that's with licensing for age wise. And then whoever we bring in, if it's not students, it might be filled up with faculty staff. Then the toddler room will be full with student parents. So then the ratio changes again. So every quarter is different, or when the move up and the aging up happens, is different. And some students also go into internships or part-time temps, and it turns into full-time employment on campus. We had last year and the year before, probably between 2 and 5, one from a student to a faculty position. And then we had grad students take full-time positions on campus. And so those children, the status changed from a student parent to a faculty staff, right? Thank you.
If I could just add something too, just as you're looking at the financials, it wasn't pointed out here, but I think it's important for you all to understand that most of the budget of the ECLC budget is labor. So it's staff and students. There's not a lot of other things built into that budget and food, because we're required there's a lot of requirements that the state puts on us.
Yeah.
But most of it's labor, and what we've had to do over the last 3 years is because of we've been able to absorb the reductions that we've received from S&A funding over the last 3 years, which is at a large budget like hers, 15% reduction is pretty steep if you do the numbers. So we've had to make some changes with staffing, and Michelle's had to reduce a lot of her staffing as well, which does affect students mostly. And then because of those pressures we've had on it, and Michelle and her team do a really good job trying to keep the cost low for parents, because childcare is super expensive. But at the end of the day, we got to pay the bills, turn the lights on. And so what we've had to do for the first time in 15 years, we had to raise rates on students. We've been able to, because of that S&A funding that you also apply for the operation, we've been able to keep that rate at low for students. Faculty and staff will continue to raise that 3 to 5% every year. They can afford to pay it. Well, they can't afford it, but they should. But your S&A funding dollars help support the funding for students. And so our philosophy was we're going to keep that rate as low as possible as long as we can. But because of the financial pressures that we've received, again, the first time in 15 years, we've had to raise rates on our students, which we don't like to do that. But the math just doesn't math sometimes, and you have to cover the cost. So that's how important these S&A dollars are for the operation CLC for our students.
I have another question. What are the rates that are charged for students versus staff?
That's fine. For the different prices, the student is only there, as you mentioned, in winter, when somebody may only have a couple hours in the morning. Does the rate change for a student for a half day, or?
Student for a half day compared to, the screen gets really full and it's a lot of numbers, so that's why I just kept it at the full days. But if you want an example for a 2-year-old for a morning block is $28 for a student parent.
With the cost of childcare, our student employees or student parents or any parents able to utilize any of the Department of the DSHS benefits, or do you find that to be a barrier for students to be able to bring their children?
I'm gonna say 2014 that was ended. But yeah, private pay only, so no state.
And then I guess my last question is really about the budget deficit that's been growing over the last few years. And is there a plan to address that?
I think kind of related to my prior conversation, we had the budget deficit, and there's a conversation about what that budget deficit, where that came from. And a lot of it was because we were trying to keep the rates low, and then we had a significant, because of the cost of the minimum wage increase and 3 to 5% increase on staff costs every year. We just didn't raise the rates enough to keep up with that, to be honest. And so I think that's this year was our attempt to try to get us out of that situation. Again, that kind of precipitated the, 50% reduction in S&A funding support plus the 15+% increase in labor costs. Again, we were just not prepared for that, the eventuality when we're doing our planning, and so the rates went up significantly this year for faculty staff, and then I can't remember what the rate was for students, but again, first time in 15 years. Our goal is to be able to, we have to charge appropriately for the services that are provided, and childcare is expensive, and Michelle's had to do some also and on top of the increased rates. She also had to cut labor. So I think it was a 12% cut in labor,
Yeah,
right?
and we'll notice a difference just because fall, this is the first time for contracts with the new rate with the increase for $8 a day for faculty, staff, and 10 for student parents.
And we have 1 minute left for questions.
So just so you know, the goal for ECLC is to cover costs. There's no, we're not here to earn, to make money or increase revenue, it's really to get to zero. That's what we're.
We have a mix of both, and the teachers, the lead teachers are early childhood program specialists 3. That's what the state considers for their child, for their title, and we have to keep the ratio that the state requires in the WACs, the Washington Administrative Code. So we could not just have 7 babies in there with 1 teacher. We have to keep it 1 to 4. So if there's another baby that comes and there's 5, you have to have 2 staff in there. So that's the difference. We do have part-time professional lead staff as well as full-time. And then we have some that they're all cyclic employees. And then we have ones that have summers off. So they're not 12-month employees. Myself, I'm the only 12-month employee. So it is much needed with the WAC and the ratio for the children to keep in compliance with the state. So we do have a mix, so not everybody is part-time.
Right, I just another really quickly, the Early Child Learning Center is a learning center. It is not a daycare. So there is a difference. And Michelle kind of talked about it in her presentation. They use a curriculum, they really care for the children. There's a reason why there's a wait list to get to ECLC, and you can talk to those who've used their services. It's a learning center. A daycare is daycare. I'm not going to say anything about that, but there is a difference. And so that's one of the cool things that I think that students get the benefit, students, faculty, and staff get the benefit of having this services provided to our community here that Michelle and her team are experts at. And then also, Michelle does talk about that, they're kind of bound by state rules and they have to follow the rules, or otherwise they can't operate. So there's a lot of, at Ben Michelle's here one time, she's really expert on the codes. But it's I don't know how many pages those things are. It's ridiculous. The requirements that they have to go through in order just to operate, but they do a great job at what they're doing at ECLC for our community.
Yeah, so we have any more questions? We need a motion to extend the time of the question. Do we have that motion? Motion to extend for 5 more minutes. And do we have a second? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, guys, have it. We have extend for questions.
So I just want to clarify. So all your funds comes from S&A fundings, and then you charge the students. That's where you get your support funds from the students and the staff.
The contract charges for the use of their time.
And then you guys get funded from the students and activities from too, right?
Right.
Yeah. Is there like any plans of trying to reduce costs for student parents, since it's supposed to benefit students more? You guys
The daily rate to reduce it?
Yeah.
No, it was just raised as of fall 2024, and the nice part about it is the grant, which most of them qualify for, that offsets it. And most of it, I would say, eliminates their bill in half, and some even 3/4, but no, not to bring it back down.
So the only way for us to do that, again, the math has to equal to 0. And so the only way for us to do that you would have to make a decision on the S&A committee to increase the funding back to previous levels for our initial, that four-year biennium 4 years ago. Then we potentially could reduce the cost. We'd have to do the math, but because, again, understand labor cost has gone up 3 to 12%, 3 to 7% every year over the last several years. And then we had the reduction in S&A support of 15% plus over the last 3 years. So do the math there. The only way for us to reduce fees for students is to have somebody, whether it's S&A or the campus or the state or somebody, pay for the rest of that labor cost, because Michelle's already reduced her labor cost by 12% in order to just keep the lights on. So there's no other way for us to reduce those costs and continue to provide the care for the children, because she's already at a minimum staffing ratio.
One more question, because I was confused with the number. How many student parents are using the service right
For this quarter,
now, or past quarter?
every quarter is different. So right around 30. So fall looks different and summer looks different, and depending on if they can get financial aid is the thing for summer. That's why student parents is low for summer, the cost, and then the no financial aid. So yes, it depends every quarter, but that's what I can give you for this quarter for an answer. And another perspective to look at is when you look at school agers, basically, when you get there, they finish the majority of their school. So a lot of them will start when they have an infant, and whether it takes them 2 or 4 years to finish central, that's why the greener the school age is predominantly all faculty, staff, children. And then summer, it might change a little bit, but that's why that class, maybe 1 or 2 will be a student parent finishing something or coming back and doing endorsement or certificate or something like that. And they've got the older, but it's really your 4-week to 36-month is the heart of it when everybody's working on their classes. They have their children.
1 minute.
How is that?
All of our debt, I mean, basically our cut in our workforce and raising our rates, and then most likely rates will be increased just like every other childcare center does every fall at the beginning of the year. The rate increase.
So if I could just add some other context to that, the ECLC is part of what we call the system here on this campus. The system is any of their non-academic, non-state allocated funds. So S&A is part of the system. The dining, housing, the bookstore, parking, these are all part of what we call the system. And so at the end of the day, the system is going to subsidize any losses. Just to give you an example, the bookstore has been operating for a loss for 5 years, and they burned through $1.2 million of surplus. And so this year, the system's going to cover that loss as well. So just to answer your question, it's covered with other revenues that are brought in with the quote system. But again, that's not sustainable. So that's why we're making the choices and the changes we have to make in order to get to zero.
Yeah, fortunately, it's time, but we can send communications later and get
If you'll tell me what
answers.
questions you have less, I can send it that way for
Yeah.
feedback.
Anyway, we appreciate your presentation. Thank you. Okay, next, the Office of Case Management.
Ten minutes. Starting now. Whenever you say start. Good afternoon. My name is Joyce Stahosky. I use she, her pronouns. I am the executive director of our health and wellness unit here at CWU. And it's an honor to be here today. The Office of Case Management is one of 5 teams within the health and wellness unit. The other teams consist of our medical and counseling teams, our university recreation, and our Office of Health Promotion. This
team in particular is a very special team to me. I was actually, fun fact, CWU's first case manager back in 2012. And it's only because of S&A funding that the position was brought forward as a one-year pilot project, part-time FTE. And over the past 13 years, it has grown into a much larger team, serving a much larger percentage of our students. So excited to be here. Thank you for your time. Go ahead. Next slide. So realize this slide has a lot of info on it, so I'm going to hit the high notes. Our mission statement, the most relevant statements or terms that stand out to me are that case managers connect with students experiencing obstacles to success through assessment, support, and connections to other formal and informal resources. So one of the key aspects to case management is students don't have to come looking for a case manager. In fact, most students find their way into case management because someone else in the community, whether peers or resident assistants, staff, faculty, club members, police, pretty much anyone other than the students themselves, expresses a concern about a student's well-being. That could be in any number of categories. We'll get to that, but most students, they get connected with case management, not by their choosing, but by our outreach. That's because we, across the nation, we're seeing an increase in really significant tragedies related to college student well-being. Students were falling through the cracks because we were asking students to take care of themselves and not really giving consideration to those students who either didn't grow up seeking help or who have stigmatized views around help seeking. So this is meant to capture those who don't already know how to get the help they need right out the gate. The referrals that we do get come through our suicide concern reports, our concern and support form, which used to be called behaviors of concern a couple years ago. I think they changed it last year. Time has warped lately for me. In addition to those primary reports, which is the bulk of how these referrals come through, we also get referrals from our behavior intervention team. All three of us here today sit on that behavior intervention team. It's a weekly group of, we call it a multidisciplinary team. So police and housing and counseling and medical and case management, we all come together and say, what's happened over the past week? Who seems to be needing help? And then case managers tend to take the bulk of the referrals that come out of that group as well. Some faculty and staff support requests come through, and that's when they don't necessarily want us to reach out to students, but they don't really know how to talk to the student about their concern. And so we do a lot of coaching. That can sometimes then lead to a referral to direct care with case management, but often we don't need to be the only ones doing the work. If we can give some tools to our colleagues across campus, that's our preference, that we all take care of each other. And then our student self-referrals number has just grown each year, whether that's because a student was contacted and opted out for help, but then 6 months later stumbled across an email that we sent with resources and they reach out. Could be because they had a good experience and they want to come back for another round of assistance, or they heard from a friend. So student self-referrals used to be like 0, and it's grown over time. So that's helpful to see. Also helpful to know, we don't have any hard stops when it relates to student care. So if you're an online student, you're a center student, international, you can be Running Start, you can be non-matriculated. If you have a student ID number that is recently activated through enrollment, services are available. Now, sometimes those are abbreviated because of other types of eligibility, but those aren't rules that we set. Also, we don't cut services just because someone isn't an active student. So the focus on retention is really heavy for most of our departments and our divisions. Sometimes the most important thing for a student to do is not to be retained, but to take a break. So these case managers counsel them out, make sure that they have all the information they need around how to get out of here without too much debt or academic failure, things like that. And then we stay in touch with them. And not like constant, but they leave, we make sure they're okay, make sure they made it home safe. And then some of them want to come back a quarter later and they call us and we help warm them back up to get enrolled and maybe have a better chance at being successful going forward. Lastly, and this is like case by case basis, students who are graduating and who realize that they don't have a good game plan, we have on occasion extended support post-graduation, especially for those who haven't really used the services up until that point. Figure they paid 4 years, we'll go ahead and offer some transitional support, which usually looks like connecting them with other teams and resources. So. Next, sorry, I'm gonna grab water. Can I set this here? Okay, so last fiscal year, our numbers were pretty consistent with what we've seen over time, where we're just a little over 10% of our enrolled student population. So I believe 23-24, I have a number of 8306. And we served 884 unique students. We got 976 referrals. Sometimes we get a couple referrals for the same person. Sometimes we get a referral with 5 students included. So how we break it down, that's where those numbers are off. You'll also notice these percentages don't add up to 100. That's because each percentage is out of that 884. So 29% of 884 students served by case management last year had high risk or suicide risk markers. Mental health over 50%, and then basic needs at 29%. Each of these have smaller percentage numbers, and most of our case management referrals, it's not a student with just one issue, right? And so they might have mental health, basic needs, and academic concerns, or grief and loss, high risk, and legal. So that's how the numbers are a little harder to make math out correctly, but we figured you'd like to know about the top 3. Those are pretty serious concerns, and even last week's Observer or this week's Observer speaks to these same concerns. In terms of demographics, every couple of years, I mean, we should be doing it annually, but things have been a little hectic. We try to assess for how is this matching up with the general student population? Are we serving some more than others? Are we serving less? And how is that playing out? So in this past year, these numbers are actually pretty consistent with Central's general pop numbers. There is one outlier, and we can talk about that in the question section because I'm worried about running out of time. But just to point it out, our students identifying as Hispanic, Latin, Pono, or non-white, that's the only number that was lower than what our general population numbers look like. We have some ideas about that, and if you'd like to know more, I can use that 10 minutes for it. Next. So this is a breakdown of the 884 students by year. And this is actually a really perfect reflection of what it means to have case management working. So we've got a really significant number for our first year students, whether that's because our first year students are all live on and so they're more visible, people are paying more attention. That could be it, or it could be that first year students don't have the same level of awareness and understanding about how they can help themselves and help each other while they're here. So with each year, the number drops. That's just one of those that I don't know that it's looked so clear every year. So when we saw this one crank out, it was like, well, there we go. If you need us at the beginning, you probably aren't going to need us at the end, because the assistance we offer is not about giving you the help. It's about the student helping themselves, just finding the way without having to get lost in the process. So, all right. So who is the case management team? They're actually here. We have 2 right now. So this is James Payton. This is Tyler Shannon. They are the folks serving those 884 students. We've had staffing changes, some more recent than others. So these are the 2, though, whose salaries are dependent on the S&A funding. Most recently, very recently, our director position has gone vacant due to a resignation. We've actually, because of the budget doom and gloom crisis coming, we've opted to hold for the time being to establish what do we need versus what would be nice. And so we also don't know that those funds are going to be available for those positions that have been vacant. For example, the 3rd case manager position has been vacant since fall 22, not because we haven't gone looking, but because we haven't been allowed to go looking. Budget wise, we're just not in a position to rely on some of the other sources that used to be more flush. And then right now, praise be, we have an office assistant position. It'll be the first time in 13 years that case management has any support for all things administrative. So someone to answer the phone when they're not in meetings, someone to be at a desk so they can come in our main door rather than have to go through another suite. So it's, I'm really excited about it. It's also going to be a significant boost in access and visibility. Right now, students have to enter through our student success main office and then wait in the lobby where a bunch of other stuff is happening. This will allow them to enter into our own more confidential lobby space and allow them to go in and out without having to go through the whole process of checking in a more formal office setting. I'm providing the supervision to the case managers right now. I'm having done, sorry?
1 minute.
Dang, I have done supervision for them. It'll be fine. We'll figure it out. And I also am in the same office space as them. They're on a lot of committees. They host a Monday morning mental health radio show. When we have more staff, we may actually put some advisor club volunteers out there, but right now we're kind of bare bones. Lots of partnerships. So if we've missed one, we're sorry. This is not an exclusive list. There's only so much room in a slide, but bottom line is if you can help a student, we want to have a relationship with you. One of our sayings is if you know a case manager, you understand that we don't have the power, but we know a lot of people who do. And this is where the power base comes from in order to get students the help they need. There's our request. This reflects a 20% reduction already. That 170 number for the prior 4 years has been cut away. Even at that 100% approval for the 4 year before, it wasn't to cover all of their salary and benefits. So each year as salaries rise and benefits costs rise, we've had to come up with more and more creative ways to find funds to make their positions whole. Next, feedback. So we solicit feedback, not just from the students in services, but from the reporting parties. I really like the top and the bottom. I mean, I like them all, but so the top, my case manager was very helpful in understanding. He was not judgmental and talked to me as an equal. And then the bottom, this university cannot keep its promises and support our diversified student body without case management. This team is critical to fulfilling this university's mission. Next. This is where our office is. This will be unlocked when we have an office assistant. And that's our special private space there in the lobby. And 10 minutes. Sorry. I'll just step closer because I have a hearing impairment, so I want to make sure.
Oh, go ahead.
I have a question. I was just wondering, what other funds received are in your total resources?
So this year we're getting creative. I had projected for the full 170 request. So we're gonna have to come up with another like 23K, but it's from a mental health earmarked state fund. That amount hasn't grown since we've gotten it, and it's meant to backfill for things like staffing and activities and resources related to mental health. So we're going to try to scrape the bottom of that and then see where else we need to go for resources.
That's only for 1 year, but how could that affect the following years? Like, is there any other things you can apply for to help supply?
So really, we're at the mercy of the state budget at this point. In the past, it's been more stable. And so we've always been told, oh, don't worry, you know, we gotcha. Right now, S&A feels like probably the most stable thing out there, financially and otherwise. So really, we're trying not to panic. What it may mean is that those positions that we haven't hired for or that are on hold will have to continue to be vacant. And the guys will just keep taking on more work and we'll do our best. So maintaining our staff that are currently here, providing the good work is my #1 priority.
CWU transfer, I see there's a increase from like 2022. On the CWU transfer, there's 0 for year 2023, and then there's 10 and 1 for 20.
Yeah,
So, thank you. There was, I believe, the $10,000, that was what was, left over from the year before, actually. So there was a leftover amount, the year before of the 10,570. Because, your finance person made a mistake in her.
I'm like, if you know that we have money somewhere.
I know it was. Please do not spend that last year. So this was actually unspent from the year before because, as Joy had mentioned, their allocation goes down. And then the 22,000 transfer out that's up a little bit higher, that was what was unspent from last year.
And last year we had an entire quarter where the 2 positions were vacant. And then these guys showed up.
How's it look with just 2 people managing 800 plus cases?
Well, that is, most of the time, all 800 don't need something at the same time. I will tell you that, prior to their arrival, COVID care was incredibly exhausting. We did a lot of contact tracing support and outreach to students who were in quarantine. And so some of us were working 60 to 70 hours a week. I think, it's our mission to get the job done, but also to take care of ourselves. So, we started with 1 position and it was 10.5 months. And over time, it's slowly grown because we reach a certain point where we're about to lose staff because there's too much work and not enough people. We've got 2 folks right now who are not fresh out of childhood and have done some other work. And so their ability to weather the stress has been one of the things that I have appreciated the most. Things that I may have been worried about with other teams in the past, I have found to be refreshingly easygoing. These are the guys who talk to our students who are psychiatrically hospitalized, help the parents get their kids' stuff moved out. We deal with student death notification and post-pension work. And they take care of themselves and we take care of each other. But it's a little, we're hopeful that we can continue to build the team up. But if we can't, then we'll do our best.
Question? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, up next, we have the marching band and pep band.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Dr. Andre Fagan, and I serve as the Director of Bands here at Central. I used to teach both of these ensembles, but I don't anymore. But because I because I oversee our operations, I'm here on behalf of both of these groups. They're 2 separate entities, and I will present them congruently, so they'll be connected to one another. There'll be a bookend to the stoppage. As I said, I'm Andre Fagan, the Director of Bands. We have hired a former student, actually. His name is Professor Kyle Edwards. He's the lecturer of band and bassoon, but he is the instructor of record for both the marching band and the pep band. So you see more of his face with these entities than me. I wanted to present in a way that was succinct and clean, talked about the past and talks a little about the future. Next year, the band program is celebrating its centennial. So we're really excited about that. 100 years, and it's interesting that the pep band was one of the very first organizations on campus many years ago. But who we are, the marching band, on the marching band side, it's a co-curricular organization that integrates music education with leadership, teamwork, and community engagement. We are an organization that serves as a vital spirit leader and musical ambassador, strengthening CWU pride and enhancing the university experience for students and the community. One of the largest and most visible student organizations, currently engaging 120 to 150 members annually, impacting thousands in the CWU and Ellensburg communities. They are key performers at key university events, athletic games, and community celebrations, fostering town gown relations. And the connection to that is the gown, of course, referring to academia. The town is our connection to our greater city. We also are an inclusive space for students of all backgrounds, providing leadership, mentorship, and artistic growth, regardless of major and academic concentration. What we need, looking at the marching band, we are needing $36,932 for the upcoming fiscal year, which is $147,728 for the upcoming quadrennium. And I'd like to highlight that it's a 49% decrease in our ask from our previous quadrennium. And I think a little background information is important to have here. Of course, we had a reduction in our operating budget, which sought us to seek how we could trim our financial operations without diminishing the quality of the experience, both for the students and for those who come in contact with the organization. So in looking at what is absolutely necessary, I think this is our bare bones to get us going. And this has been challenging for us. One of our major reductions was a reduction in staffing. We used to have non-student employees that were an integral part of our work, both in the color guard positions as well as the percussion positions. Both of those positions were eliminated in 2022. And we've had to kind of figure out and be creative on how we could fill that gap. So far, we've been able to do that inside with student workers on the percussion side. Professor Edwards has an extensive background in the marching arts in color guard, so he's been able to take that role, but that's been extremely challenging for the role that he already has to do, managing the operations and the performance quality of the ensemble itself. So we are working on having that connection. Another issue for us on that staffing side is that becomes a rotating door for us. We found that certainly consistency of instruction is important. But before I arrived, that the staffing that were in those areas had been here for many years, and we thus had greater sense of consistency. When both of those positions were eliminated, and you may not have noticed this because we tried to do a really great job of hiding it, when the color guard position went away, so did the color guard. So it disappeared. It was not on the field, not functioning for that academic year. And again, we tried to do the best we could of rehashing that, and we're now seeing some great dividends here. And I know that it's because Professor Edwards is here and has that skill set and that experience, and so that's an attractive piece for us and for him. So we're building back better in that regard. And same thing on the percussion side. The student percussion assistant is a senior, so we're going to be losing him soon. But I think that we have a plan on how we can provide that leadership opportunities for senior percussionists throughout the season to have a little bit of consistency and some training while that person is in an underclassman position to move forward. How we use the funds in marching band, and you'll see on the top here that our numbers still scoot you down a little bit. Our number still stands at 36,932, if I made that correct, but $6,000 in student payroll benefits, and goods and services. And I'll outline what that looks like in terms of a small breakdown so that we can see where the money or the projected money is funneling into on the larger scale as an overview. What that looks like on the inside, as we say, the student funded positions, we have been functioning in this regard with a percussion instructor who is a student, the marching band music librarian who also is a student, and the student assistant for operation and logistics. And there were 2 of them this past season. And again, a major reduction for us. In our last quadrennium, every leadership position in the marching band was funded. It was about 30, maybe 32 of them. And so we've gone from, we still have these leadership positions. They're just not paid positions, but these are critical functions for us. Certainly allows for some leadership opportunities for the students, but also allows for a release of pressure from the primary instructor for these organizations. Some overview from the goods and services, and I can talk a little about some of this from rehearsal equipment. We practice on the field that's outside of McIntyre. There's no height there. We've tried to balance our schedule over the past couple of years to see when we can rehearse when the stadium is available. And so that's either at 5 a.m. or it's at 9:30 p.m. But in the time of day that we need and where our ensembles are sitting, that midday is prime opportunity for stadium use. So we, of course, as we have always done, practice on the McIntyre field. But having said that, you cannot teach a marching band from the ground. So we have to rent a scissor lift. We have to have equipment that will allow us access to 150 to 200 feet in the air so that we may see and evaluate. Technology to promote learning and sustainability. 4 years ago, we went into a program that's called Ultimate Drill Book that allowed us to eliminate the use of paper, which was to learn drill, which was really, really great for us. The marching maneuvers that you see on the field are by page. This graph that's created, but each student used to have that in their possession. So at the end of the season, perhaps a student had 200 or so pages of paper over the course of however many halftime shows that we had. Now all of that is on our smartphones, which has worked out really, really wonderful for us. And our copy machines are grateful. So we're excited about that. It's really helped learning, the speed of that learning, the efficiency of that learning. And that's been really important to us. As Professor Edwards has begun, the marching band tries to learn a new production each performance, so that helps us a great deal. Music and licensing for public performance. If you know anything about copyright and copyright laws, this is how you get rich in America. But that's a great deal for us to secure the music itself and to have the proper licensing for anything that we are originating here with our staff. Uniform maintenance and cleaning. And I think in the last quadrennium, I was mentioning how I think we have overextended the deadline of seeking out new uniforms, but we are writing them until the threads fall off, and they are currently falling off. But that's a great deal of cost for us, making sure that we have clean uniforms. And we're also wearing a uniform that it's impossible for us to wash on our own. Uniforms that are made now, and that's before this purchase, are are machine washable, which is great. And when we do have the opportunity to have new uniforms, the dry cleaning situation will become obsolete for us because we can do those things here on campus in the same place where they wash football jerseys. So that was going to be really, really wonderful for us. And then motor pool transportation, it's not very far, but we have a lot of equipment specifically on game days, 4 to 5 times a season, depending on the season, of getting equipment from A to B. And we've been very exploratory in doing that, throwing it in your car by any means necessary, getting it to where it belongs. But to calculate that in our operating budget. So when you see the number from the previous slide, that's a lot of money, but for a lot of things that are absolutely fundamental for us to function. Our marching band organizational chart, as you can see here, that's me. The Wildcat Marching Band Director is Kyle Edwards. We have a series, or not a series, but a number of drum majors depending on the season. The leadership team for next season has not yet been selected, but that will happen in the spring quarter, so we will know what that looks like. The section leader, the percussion and color guard instructor, the student assistants for operations management, and this line here, these were all once in the past parts of our student organization, student staff rather, that was on payroll that is no longer. I can't see my next slide, but I guess my next slide will reveal where I'm going. Switching organizations. So similar, but not similar. We said co-curricular for the marching band. Pep band is extracurricular, an activity organization housed within the Department of Music. Let me pause and retract, because I know this conversation always comes up about the marching band. The marching band is a class. So if that was in your mind about like what that is, the marching band currently is a class, and it is currently a required class for those who are studying instrumental music education. So students who are in the marching band studying instrumental music education spend 2 quarters or 2 years in the marching band as a part of their degree program. It's one of the jobs that they will hold out in their position as public school teachers at the high school level. It's the only music degree that's connected to that. Again, we have performance majors and English majors and chemistry majors, et cetera, but I wanted to highlight that attribute. This is the high energy spirit leader and music ambassador, strengthening CWU pride and enhancing the university experience for students and community. It's a 36-member student organization that showcases musical excellence in leadership and professionalism. They are performers at major university events, athletic events, and community celebrations, fostering my new favorite phrase, town-gown relations. An inclusive space for students of all backgrounds, providing leadership, mentorship, and artistic growth regardless of major. Certainly it's my job to advocate for these great students that I teach, but if you've ever been at an athletic event, or a Wildcat welcome, or a basketball event, or an event connected to homecoming, you know that this organization absolutely changes the environment and experience for our students. Myself personally, I went to very large institutions of higher learning with populations of 45 to 55,000 students. The band was always the most famous thing on campus because it was one thing that I thought that belonged to the university. And I often in our welcome meetings speak about the marching band as being the front door to the university. When I was dropped off a long time ago in my undergrad at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in 110-degree heat, my parents kicked me out of the car and sent me to the place that I recognized, which was band. But by the time school started a week later, I had 425 friends, someone in every class that belonged to the organization that I did. And we were the most famous people on campus. It was really, really awesome. But I think that that just attests to the environment changing atmosphere that these organizations are. And we cannot be more grateful of the support that S&A has provided over the years to allow us to continue to be that. I should mention, and I will mention this in our next chart, the 36-member student organization. Most of our funding from this from S&A go directly to student payroll for this organization. And we have created a stipend system for them that I believe has been the same, I think, for the past 10 years. What we need, 18,626 for the upcoming fiscal year, $74,504 over the next quadrennium, and it's a 13% decrease in ask from our previous quadrennium. And I keep highlighting this decrease thing because I understand the unique position and the challenging position that you are in. I get that. I also sit in budget meetings for the university on multiple levels. We are all singing the same tune. We are trying to figure out how to make things work. And so looking with my staff and talking to the students about how we operate and how we function, we're interested in doing that too. How can we reduce to the bare minimum without compromising the quality of what it is that we are delivering? Small overview again, 15,300 in student payroll over roughly what turns out to be 17 to 18 individual performances throughout the end of the fall quarter and through the beginning of the spring quarter. So it's a large range of time, but the bulk of their performances and appearances take place within the winter quarter, the one that we are in. What we have found that helps us in this reduction is that because marching band and pep band are interrelated, that they're both athletic bands, we can share a little bit of our resources, and that's been really, really helpful for us to be able to bring down some costs. For example, flip folders that are used in one organization can absolutely be used in another organization. We again, just try to find every corner that we can to bring a reduction in. Overview of student funded positions, again, 36 of them is what this budget has reflected. For pep band musicians in 3 specific areas, the woodwind area consisting of piccolo, clarinet, saxophone, brass, mellophone, baritone, trombone, and sousaphone. And then rhythm section, our drum set players, our bass guitar players, and our electric guitar players. And again, the bulk of that, not the bulk, the majority of that funding is going to our student funded positions. Some overview of goods and services for us. Again, the moneymaker of America, the music and licensing for public performance. But again, we have tried to have a sense of connection. What are we using on the marching band side that can help reduce the cost here? Music folio and lyre replacements. For some reason, these get more damaged during basketball season and during the winter than it does in the fall. But I imagine because the marching band has 4 to 5 performances a quarter, this group has 17. So simply the wear and tear. And then again, to place the organization in a unified uniform that's not the marching band uniform. Organizational chart that looks similar to the one for marching band with the pep band director, Professor Epworth. Again, another student assistant for operations and logistics. And then all of those sections that I just mentioned in the woodwind, brass, and electric bass category have the leaders that help us operate this group. You can find us in several places. We live in McIntyre Music Building, of course. You can check us out on the CWU Department of Music website. We're on Facebook, and we are on Instagram. And that's the presentation.
Thank you. Before we proceed to questions, we need to have a motion to extend by 15 minutes. We have a motion for that.
I'll motion to extend the meeting by 15 minutes.
You have a second? All right, well, I guess we have one.
Technically, we don't have a quorum to vote on it.
I got to stake that. Fair enough. Now we can proceed to questions.
Yes. Everybody always does. This is the one, yes.
The travel expenses, are any of those events that are within what happened in like 2024? Were those like outside of the university or just events here on campus?
Just events here on campus.
Okay. Marching didn't have any travel. It was the pep band that travels, right?
Yeah, well, they both could travel. We just sometimes don't because of the large amount of people, but we take a pep band to a location. We just had an event in Nachis a few weeks ago, or something in the community. But the desire to take our band to play at a Western Washington game, is awesome, but also costly. So we just cheer from the house.
Then the CWU program it was decreased from 2022 to 2024.
Yes. So that, and I don't have those numbers directly in front of me, but we had, and I think was it all programs? I think we had a reduction. And it was in the middle of the year, and I remember having a conversation with our fiscal secretary about how that was going to be reduced, because I think programs across the board were being reduced, but that was in the middle of the previous quadrennium. I don't have those exact percentages, but they were enough to make me scream about it. It was beyond. It was more. It was more than, it was like 10 to 12%, but it was in the middle of an operating year. It's pretty terrifying.
When you're goods and services, I was looking at your tab, you have like, it said 33 and then you wrote 30,000. I don't know. For the marching band, right here.
That's what they expended last year, so his ask for this year is that.
Yes.
Also on the paper, you have 28 and you're asking 30, so you're asking for more.
For what that?
For goods and services, on the paper here that I have, we have 28 and on yours it says 30.
The original request you sent us, Dr. Fagan, had $28,080 for goods and services, but this one just says 30.
And I think that was a matter of me going back to look at some more operations post end of marching band, to make an adjustment, knowing that I was going to have the opportunity to come and make an ask. With that question in mind, is our overall number still less than? Okay, and that's yes.
So payroll decreased also for students for this quadrennium. Also, so it's like I noticed that in 23 you guys was it like more staff?
Oh, a lot more. So that's still something that we would like to offer, but we understand that may not be possible. The good news for us is, students still wanting an opportunity to take leadership positions weren't drastically turned off by not wanting to participate or contribute because of didn't have a financial ticket to it as well.
I also see the marching band is like average marching band has huge increase
Where?
on the program. Looking at your annual financial statement for last year. The growth in the activation programming cost.
I have your reports actually. Are you looking at margin down? And what was the question again? In expenses?
Programming.
So. It looks like. Model, well, there's the cleaning goes into that group, there's your shirts that
Yeah.
go into that group. The piccolos maybe,
Yes, the new incentive, yes.
and there's the podium and some apparel.
Yeah.
So just the equipment that you mentioned in your presentation.
Which, and again, and thank you for that, which are things, for example, the podium equipment, the instrument equipment, those are be things that don't need to be replaced. And that's an excellent question of a once in a decade purchase.
Can I ask a question? So Dr. Fagan, how does the music department support the marching band and the pep band as well?
This is thank you for asking that. This is the question, and again, this question comes up every time I present to you. Once upon a time, that support from our department was in our department because our department also had some funding, I believe, out of this organization. I know how they were balancing funds. But currently, on both the marching band side and the pep band side, that financial support is at zero. It is at zero. Should from the music department itself, should it be? But I'd also like to add, not to open up a can of worms, because that's another conversation that I need to have in another place. It's also zero with our athletic friends. And so when we think about the benefit where that comes from, and that's that's a whole nother campaign to have, where that support could come from. It's basically a free service. It's just because it's expected, not because it is required. Again, the marching band could function on McIntyre Field as a teaching resource and tools for future teachers. And it could be a great outlet for students across the campus, and it never see the light of day in performance. And it could still be a viable ensemble. But the impression that we have given for the past 85 years is that it's deeply connected to athletics. When you see them, they go. But those are the two areas where we should be having some support from those areas. And that's not currently the case.
But you do receive, I mean, indirectly or directly, Professor Edwards' salary is paid from the music department. You all have storage space in the music department.
Correct.
You can use it for rehearsal space.
Correct.
So it's
Yeah, so
maybe not direct funding.
not
but-
direct funding, but like, yeah, resources, right? Certainly, yes. Thank you. Yeah, the thing that you brought up, I say once a year, people just stare at me like, what? But yes. And so that you are aware, the majority of the ensembles housed in the department currently, I mean, through from a request from us many years ago from the board of trustees, have student fees that are associated with the course. I think maybe marching band, and again, because of, I think the ask, marching band, I know, and it has not been for maybe period, does not collect student fees.
But it is still attached to an academic.
But it is still attached to an academic course, for credit. And again, required of those in the music education instrumentals, area specifically.
We have any other questions? All right.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
I do not envy your work.
All right, due to not having quorum, we are going to have to move the deliberation for last week's supplemental funding request for the ASCWU next week. And then now we'll make the second call for public comment. Do we have any public comment? All right, nothing heard. Now then, the meeting is adjourned at 4 o'clock on the dot. Oh, sorry.
You can't approve it anyway.
Yeah, that's true. We're.
Meet you. Wonderful.
Motion
to have you.
carried.
Some of our
All right,
students
it's
that,
approved by default.
a lot of our-